will ruin the economy. The President of the United States is embarking on a very ambitious, a very dangerous agenda to turn America into a corrupt, socialist nation complete with authoritarian rule, right? This is a moment in time where we need to speak up. Hello, everyone. I'm Trish Regan. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. Biden is about to introduce what I would call the most moronic piece of policy that I've seen, certainly in regards to the economy. In my history of reporting, I haven't seen anything quite this dumb. He wants to raise taxes on everyone. Income taxes, they're going to go way up. Corporate taxes are going to go way, way up. And take a look here. I want you to see what investment taxes are going to look like. He wants capital gains taxes to go up to 39.6% from the current 20%. Only on wealthy Americans, though. You have to earn $1 million for him to be looking at something like this. Oh, and if you earn more than that, 43.4% for the wealthiest of Americans. This is so idiotic. It's so idiotic because, listen, anybody who's invested in the market is going to be affected by this. If people take their money out, and they will, then guess what? The value of the market goes down. You're going to wipe out lots and lots, trillions of dollars of money. But you know what? They don't think this way. Or maybe they do. In fact, maybe there is a method to the madness. Maybe they know that they will decimate so many people's retirements, which makes people, what? More dependent on Uncle Sam, or in this case, Uncle Joe. I want you to see Brian Deese, who comes courtesy of BlackRock. He used to run the environmental group there at BlackRock, which controls so much money, they rival the size of the U.S. economy. Anyway, Brian Deese is saying, don't worry, not unless you make more than $1 million here.
This change will affect taxpayers making more than $1 million a year. In 2018, 0.3% of tax filers made more than $1 million a year. We're talking about 0.3%. That's about 500,000 households in the country that we're talking about. And that's why the reforms that the president will lay out are focused on this top sliver of people and treating capital gains the same as wages for that top 0.3%. And we believe that it's not only fair, but it would also help to reduce the kinds of tax avoidance that significantly undermines trust and fairness in the tax code itself.
I can't watch that anymore. That makes me too angry because they are playing off of people's sense of fairness, trying to say, oh, you know what? Those 500,000 people, they don't deserve to make that much money. We got to take some. It's only going to affect them. It's only going to affect this little sliver of the population. Give me a break. We're not stupid. I mean, they think we are. They think we are stupid and we don't understand that when you pull money out of the markets, it actually affects everyone. All the police officers that have their retirement funds there. Maybe this is Brian Deese's objective too, right? They don't like the police so much these days. But also the teachers will be affected. The firefighters will be affected. Anybody who has savings will be affected. What about the small business owner who's been working his or her whole life, 30 years, to build up their business? And guess what? The government says, you know what? We think that's worth, or you're going to sell it for more than X number of dollars. Therefore, now we are going to tax you at nearly 40%, maybe 43%. This is so wrong. You've already paid, for one thing. You know, when you make an investment in the market, you've already, earned that money, theoretically, right? Probably through labor. So you've probably paid a lot in terms of income taxes on that. Then you take that hard-earned money and you take a risk to invest in American companies, right? That's a big risk, but it's a good thing for the country. It's a good thing for those little companies that need a little bit of money and the big ones as well. So you take that risk, and the government should theoretically want to encourage you to take that risk. And now they're going to take away that encouragement. I mean, all I can say is it's like, who's on first? We're talking dumb, dumb, and dumber. This is your administration these days, ladies and gentlemen, and they are determined to ruin the economy. They are determined to make it much harder for any other American to get ahead in this world because they will create such an onerous policy that it will make it difficult for generations and generations and generations to come. Thank goodness Joe Manchin's there. I'm hoping that he's going to once again be the adult in the room. Coming up, it's very interesting. Biden talks about how everybody else has to pay taxes. Maybe he should start himself. Wait till you hear what I have to tell you about Biden's personal tax evasion scandal. That's next. Don't you love how Joe Biden talks about how everybody needs to pay their fair share? This is a constant theme, right? Among those politicians in the left that somehow think that people who have actually worked hard and earned their money don't deserve it. And they think that that money needs to go back to the government so that the government can then redistribute it however the government sees fit. This is socialism, okay? And it's increasingly not just socialism, it's going to things that are even worse. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. I do want to get to this sound because this really shows you how Joe Biden thinks it's so important to pay your fair share.
No, it's based on a simple premise. It's time to reward work, not just wealth in America. We're going to have a fair tax structure that makes sure the wealthiest among us and corporations pay their fair share.
Yeah. Everybody needs to pay their fair share except apparently for Joe Biden and his wife, Jill. And I'm not even talking about the Hunter stuff, okay? Let's just talk about Joe and Jill Biden. Biden, who has this very ambitious economic agenda and is actually, according to some reports, proposing to give the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, an extra $80 billion and a whole bunch more authority during the next 10 years to help crack down on any tax evasion by high earners. Well, maybe the IRS should start with Joe and Jill Biden themselves. I want you to see this. This is some complicated tax strategy that Joe and Jill employed. So they had a business, a speaking business, by which Joe was earning millions and millions of dollars, estimates between $13 and $15 million, for which, because it's a small business, he's supposed to pay a payroll tax of 3.8% as a self-employed person. Well, what did he do? He avoided the tax with some fancy accountants that got him out of the 3.8%. So guess what? He saved over $500,000. Whoop-de-doo. Good for you, Joe. I love how the accountant tells the Wall Street Journal there's no reason for this, meaning his business, these to be in an S Corp, none other than to save on self-employment tax. Okay, here's a question. A guy who's making $15 million on speeches and book deals, who thinks it's so important to give money back to the government, right, to pay those taxes, why the heck does he get away with not having to pay 3.8% tax? Because he hires an accountant. By the way, the accountant, I'm sure, cost a pretty penny. He's saving $500,000 out of his 15 million bucks. He's doing this and yet simultaneously saying, I'm not going to let you save money. No way. What is this? Tax loopholes for me? In other words, we're going to have the IRS go after you, but there can be tax loopholes for people like me? I mean, he's already using them. Sometimes you need this stuff to start at home. Put your money where your mouth is. If you care that passionately about making sure that people don't do things like this, then why are you, Joe Biden, doing things like this, right? I mean, this is something else. $513,000 they saved. I'm sorry, you're running for president, and does the media pick up on this? No, of course not. The media never picks up on anything like this because it's too hard, frankly. It's money. It's taxes. We're talking about an S Corp. They're like, forget about it. Here's the reality. He used a loophole in our tax system to get out of paying $500,000, but he wants to make sure that everybody else's taxes go up, and he wants to make sure that no one is able to use the loophole like he does. Marxism apparently pays pretty well these days, which is good for some people, like the head of the BLM group, apparently. She's living pretty high off this whole Marxist theology. I've got some details for you next. Hey, who knew? Marxism pays a pretty penny these days. Patrisse Cullors telling us all she is a trained Marxist. This is the woman who runs the BLM movement. Here we go.
I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
You know, okay, you're a trained Marxist. And you like the nicer stuff in life, we see. I want to talk about just exactly how much money this woman is spending, Patrisse Cullors, apparently, with her jail reform group, spent nearly $26,000 for meetings at a luxury Malibu resort in 2019. This information coming to us courtesy of some campaign finance records reviewed by the Daily Caller News Foundation. Reform LA Jails, that's the name of the group that she was running, dropped $10,179 for meetings and appearances at the Calamigos Guest Ranch and Beach Club in Malibu, California, and another $15,593 at the Malibu Conference Center, a corporate conference facility owned by the resorts. Again, according to these records, uncovered by Daily Caller, looking between July and September 2019. Guess that we're at the 200-acre resort. Pretty place, huh? We're spending at least $600 a night. $600 a night for this, and you got exclusive access to the private 5-acre strip on the Malibu coast. Cullors is allegedly raking in upwards of $20K a month as well for her little stint with this little group, according to the Daily Caller News Foundation. You know, it comes on the heels, of course, of the report about her $1.4 million place in the Topanga compound. That was the subject of a Dirt.com story. She apparently owns the property with her spouse, BLM Canada co-founder, Janaya Khan. So the piece chronicles what it calls a real estate buying binge. Apparently, she's just been out there picking up homes left and right. 4 homes purchased over the course of 5 years, including a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath Inglewood home for $510,000 in 2016, a 4-bedroom residence in South LA for $590K, and a 3-bedroom home on several acres in the Atlanta suburb of Connors for $450,000. And then, of course, this residence, the biggie, you know, now that she's really hit pay dirt as a Marxist. I mean, I'm sorry. Come on. I mean, this is disgraceful. You cannot, on the one hand, be talking about how nobody else deserves to have private property, that nobody else deserves the ability to earn something and save something, when that's exactly what you're doing yourself. Okay, because listen, if you would just recognize the wonderful reality of who we are as human beings, you'd understand why capitalism actually works and why capitalism is never to be discarded like this team is actually doing. I mean, this Marxist hypocrisy is just too much. It's too much. And you know what? I think we're hitting a tipping point. I think people have had it. I know you've probably had it. I've had it. I think, you know, your everyday folks out there are starting to question this because they realize that these people are nothing but a bunch of hypocrites and they're all just trying to make a buck, right? Patrisse Cullors is a capitalist. You got to give her that. Okay, coming up, speaking of capitalism, as bad as this policy is, as disastrous and as moronic as Joe Biden's economic policy is, you still need to plan for your future. You still need to be invested. I've got some ideas for you on how you're going to hedge effectively the mass inflation that's coming down the pike. Don't go anywhere. You know, I complain a lot about the Biden economic policy, and I'm complaining because we need to complain, because it's actually a really, really bad thing for our economy and for our investments going forward. Not in the here and now. I mean, I think you have to sort of distinguish between what is happening currently in the marketplace versus what might happen in the future. Certainly right now, I mean, it's party on, right? Like, it's good. It's really good to be invested in the stock market right now. And that's why I want you to be invested. You have to think about what's happening with the Fed, what's happening with Biden's policy, where this money is going to get spent. There are some things that are very problematic. I certainly hope he's not going to get the tax stuff through. I'm hoping, again, I have a lot of faith in Joe Manchin, perhaps too much, but he's all we got right now. But nonetheless, you want to be invested right now, because if you're not invested in the markets, you're going to miss out on the inflation that's most certainly coming. Asset inflation happened quite dramatically during the Biden-Obama years, and they're happening again now during the, I almost said Harris-Biden, but you know what I mean, the Biden-Harris years. Maybe she really is running the show, right? When you think about all these policies that are going to cost us in the future, you have to think about what it's going to mean for prices. In other words, you may be saving your dollars right now, but if suddenly a cup of coffee costs you $35 at Starbucks instead of the outrageous $5 that it already is, well, things are going to be tough. Things are going to be tight. So you need to be invested in assets that are going to grow over time. It's one of the reasons why I like real estate. Why you should. This is like good debt, right? It's why you want to be invested in your home. It's one of the reasons why I like being in the market, like being in stocks, in equities, long term. I mean, if you've got to do a rotation in the next couple of years, if you're looking to retire, you got to be more careful right now. But if you've got a long enough time horizon, basically you're not going to beat the stock market. Time and time again, we have seen all the numbers prove that out. Nonetheless, there is this political landmine, right? There's this political landmine in terms of taxation, and there's a landmine in terms of what the Fed is doing. I think back to every bubble that's ever happened. And every single time the Fed has been responsible, certainly in my career. I mean, you look at the tech bubble, and then you look at the bubble in '08, which was not just a bubble, right? That created a systemic crisis. Those are the things that I really worry about. And so now, if you're going to look at the market right now, I think you could call this sort of the coronavirus bubble. We put all this money to work, and it's like, okay, great, we put all that money to work, but now we're still putting it to work. And then we're putting some more to work. And if Biden gets his way, he's going to put a whole bunch more, too much, frankly, to work. And that creates bubbles in and of itself, alongside the Federal Reserve that's printing money like there's no tomorrow. So you got to think about that, and you're going to have to, at some point, consider a rotation. And I'll tell you when, because I watched this very, very carefully. Oddly, I've sensed these things long before they happen. But right now, I'm watching the 10-year yield on the Treasury to see if that creeps up. If we start getting closer to 2% and higher, then I think people are going to really need to rethink their investment strategy. But right now, you want to be in stocks. You want to be in Bitcoin. Okay, I've been saying this. I've liked Bitcoin, for years now, going back to 2012 was when I was first reporting on it and saying, this is really, really cool. And it's cool on many, many levels. I mean, certainly, I think if you are like me and you tend to have a sort of libertarian approach to things and you don't like the government messing with your money, then Bitcoin is a really incredibly compelling opportunity. And yeah, it's going up, up, up in a way, but I think over the long term, it serves as a hedge, right? Bitcoin is a hedge against total disaster. It's a hedge against basically fiat currencies not being able to represent really anything. If Biden keeps on spending, if Powell keeps on printing, then is the US dollar really going to be worth what it is now? The answer to that is no. And so you need to look around to diversify yourself to kind of have that hedge against a total disaster. So I like Bitcoin. I mean, gold, same thing, right? And Bitcoin is like a different version of gold. I mean, you probably want to have a little bit of both in your portfolio. I've been talking about gold 2000. I think we're going to get there relatively soon. But Bitcoin and gold are sort of inverses of each other. A lot of people say, Bitcoin's doing well because gold investors are transitioning in. I disagree with that. I think that if you're a Bitcoin investor, chances are you're probably wanting to be in gold and vice versa as well. Bitcoin, it doesn't really have any value except that people trust it. And in an environment where increasingly the government is encroaching on our freedoms, maybe Bitcoin with its peer-to-peer technology is going to represent something that's in the future considered more trustworthy, Gold, I mean, it's proven itself, right? You can go back thousands and thousands of years, and gold has always been a great store of value. So you want it for that reason, but you can't really carry those gold bars around, right? The Bitcoin, on the other hand, is something that you can keep active and really fluid, right? And so you can move that money quickly, and that's one of the reasons why I like it. The other thing I've been telling people to watch over and over again is oil. I do believe that we are in the midst of a serious recovery. I think this is in spite of Joe Biden and his policies. I think the economy is going to do so well because there's a heck of a lot of pent-up demand. I mean, people have been sequestered in their homes now for a year, and they've had it, right? So they want to go out and travel, and they want to actually go to the office and go to work. And there's a lot of things that people want to do and they will do in the coming year. And this is not just happening in the US, it's happening all over the world. And so we still need oil. Now, I know there's a goal here to transition everybody to electric vehicles and green sources of energy. But one of the things that the Biden administration forgets is that the more you do that, the scarcer oil becomes. More people still they have things that still run on oil. It's not going away overnight. And so therefore that drives the price of oil up. So OPEC, that meeting coming up, I want you to keep an eye on that. But this is what I like. Stocks, just some of the names to watch. I like Coin. Again, it's because I like cryptos and I like Bitcoin. But keep an eye on Coin. I've been telling everybody ever since it went public. Roblox is another one that I love and I've been telling everybody to go for since it went public. It's been doing extraordinarily well. Tesla, you'll recall, I asked everybody earlier in the year to kind of back away from that one. I would continue to watch it, but I'd also look at some of the companies that service Tesla and service these electric vehicles and make some of those electric engines. They're ones to keep an eye on. And we'll continue talking about it. If this is something that's interesting to you, I want to encourage you to go to my private group on Facebook. We have a private group there where we talk a lot about investing ideas. I tell you what I'm watching. You tell me what you're watching. We exchange some thoughts. I encourage you. That's Trish Regan's private group on Facebook. And we have some politics in there too. Surprise, surprise. But they all go hand in hand these days, don't they? Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you back here tomorrow.